Watch right now on the Front News Project. Moscow and St. Petersburg have been shaken. Hundreds of drones are striking military targets on Russian territory. The enemy is attacking Sumy and preparing to storm the Kharkiv region. Exclusive footage from the very heart of the war. And also Putin's Russia is hitting Ukraine with new drones. Could they really be more dangerous than Shaheds? Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines. Watch it right now. The bloody war continues. A war that Vladimir Putin and his gang unleashed on Ukrainian soil. The heroic resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the entire Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom continues. Greetings. This is Front News. Vladimir Timoshenko here with you. For the next 30 minutes, you'll get the truth about the war, uncovered by our journalists from the hottest combat zones. So, are you ready? Then let's get started. And we're starting right away with exclusive material. Russia will remember this strike by the armed forces of Ukraine forever. Just imagine, 400 drones were launched simultaneously at Russian positions. As a result, more than 40 pieces of enemy equipment were destroyed. President Zelensky reported this. Meanwhile, there were hundreds of explosions in Moscow and the Moscow region. They say Moscow never sleeps, but after such attacks, Muscovites definitely won't be able to fall asleep for a long time. In particular, drones attacked a drone development plant in the Moscow region city of Dubna. Moscow Mayor Sobyanin, by the way, complained a lot after this strike. And here's another piece of bad news for Putin. Germany may provide Ukraine with resources to develop its own cruise missiles with a range of 2,500 kilometers. It seems the Kremlin should get ready. But there is also troubling news. Russia is amassing more than 50,000 troops in the Sumy direction. All the details are in our report. Another restless night in Russia. They say 200 drones. Moscow and the region are once again under UAV attack.
Knock on wood.
Let's go, let's go.
Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Quiet, quiet, quiet.
Turn off the light.
Quiet, quiet, quiet.
In the morning, Zelenograd near Moscow came under a powerful strike. One of the hits landed on the Elma Technopark.
Cool!
A guy was just walking by there.
It's burning well.
There should be people there now.
Beautiful.
They work 24/7.
The Elma Technopark in Zelenograd is one of the leading centers where Russia assembles its UAVs. There was also a strike in the city of Dubna at the Kronstadt plant, which also specializes, among other things, in the development and production of drones.
Don't fall, fall, dash! Oh, quiet! Well, that's it already.
This is evidence that Ukroboronprom has increased and scaled up the production of strike drones. The Ukrainian side now has the capability to strike legitimate military targets on the territory of the Russian Federation, given the current situation. In other words, this is about the planned work of Ukraine's defense forces and Ukrainian intelligence. The strikes are being carried out on defense industry enterprises that are directly involved in the production of strike drones. An analysis of the latest strikes, Ukrainian UAVs.
And this is just the beginning. Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Russia will receive a mirror response to all attacks on Ukrainian cities.
Of course, we cannot publicly discuss our existing plans or our capabilities. But the outlook is clear: to respond in kind to all Russian threats and challenges. There in Russia, they must clearly feel the consequences of what they are doing against Ukraine. And that will happen. It will happen.
In addition, Germany and 3 other countries have reportedly lifted restrictions on Ukraine that previously prevented it from using Western weapons to strike deep into the territory of the aggressor country, Russia. At the same time, German Chancellor Merz clarified that the government had not made any new decisions.
The point is that the restrictions were lifted several months ago. Let's analyze Merz's statement. He says that the nature of military technical assistance to Ukraine should not be publicized in the media, but should take place quietly behind closed doors. this is absolutely the right rhetoric from the German Chancellor. The Russian Federation should not know either the nature of the military technical assistance provided to the Ukrainian Defense Forces or, accordingly, the technical and tactical specifications of the weapons supplied by our key partners for the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the Russian command is redeploying new forces to the border of the Sumy region, particularly from the eastern directions, according to analysts from the Institute for the Study of War. The occupiers also control 4 settlements in the Sumy region and continue their attempts to create a buffer zone.
At the moment, between 40 and 60,000 operational reserves of Russian troops are concentrated in the Sumy direction. However, it should be noted that the redeployment of personnel is primarily related to the sharp intensification of actions by the Ukrainian Defense Forces, not only in the Kursk direction, but also, accordingly, in the Belgorod and Bryansk directions. And this is evidence that the Russian Federation has acknowledged the fact that the operational tactical groupings of Bryanka, Belgorod, and Sudzha do not have enough units to accomplish the task of neutralizing the creation of a security zone, now a Ukrainian one, on the territory of the Russian Federation.
Moreover, according to the Washington Post, this summer Russia is planning to launch a large-scale offensive in the eastern part of the Donetsk region.
At the time of the so-called peace negotiations, including those in Istanbul, the Russian Federation sharply intensified military operations directly in the Donetsk direction. At the moment, the Russian Federation is considering several scenarios for itself. This involves capturing the 4 largest industrial centers in the Donetsk region that are under the control of Ukraine's defense forces: Kostiantynivka, Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and Druchkivka. That is why, unsurprisingly, the focus of military operations during the so-called summer campaign will shift specifically to the Kostiantynivka direction.
Russia has also upgraded Iranian Shahed-type drones, equipping them with 90-kilogram warheads, which has increased their destructive power. As a result, in recent times, the occupiers' attacks have become larger in scale, the drones more deadly, and countering this new threat is becoming even more difficult. Well then, now let's analyze the operational situation on the much-suffering Pokrovsk front. The enemy continues its military terror. Since the beginning of the day on the Pokrovsk front, the occupiers have made 31 attempts to push our defenders from their positions in the areas of the settlements of Zarya, Popov Yar, Malinovka, Mirolubovka, Elizavetovka, Lisovka, Kotlino, Novosergevka, Udachnoye, Troitskoye, and Andrevka. The defense forces are holding back the enemy's onslaught and have already stopped 27 attacks. And this was also a very difficult week for the Khmelnytsky region. Enemy attacks damaged homes and infrastructure in Starokostiantynivka, and furthermore, Putin's inhumans killed 4 people in Kasil. There, a missile struck the home of an elderly couple. They died along with their neighbor and a 25-year-old woman who had come from Kiev for her sister's graduation. Another 7 people were injured. All the details will be reported and shown by TSN journalist Anna Makhno.
This is my beloved childhood home where I grew up and hold so many memories.
All that's left of this house in the city of Kasil are ruins. A Russian missile hit here. Inside were Victor's parents. They died.
Right in my mother's bedroom. Unfortunately, we can't even find her remains. The medical examiners barely found anything. My father's body is more or less intact.
The houses are destroyed. No roofs, doors, or windows. And nearby, in this house, 23-year-old Marina was killed. She had come to congratulate her younger sister on her graduation.
She came from this house for just 1 day off from Kiev and spent the night here, resting until the morning light.
Valentina's husband also didn't manage to escape the Russian missile. She says she wasn't home at the time.
They found him under the rubble. The ceiling and a wall had collapsed on him.
There was a rumble, things were flying and exploding. No one in Kasil slept that night, says the head of the community.
It was a terrible, tragic night for our community. We survived by a miracle, simply because we managed to hide in the cellar in time. It was extremely loud. We were terrified in our cellar because everything was shaking.
The injured were taken to hospitals. Many, they say, were cut by shards of broken glass.
Look at what happened to the doors. I already cut my finger just by touching it.
And you already cut your hands?
Yes, I've already cut myself.
Medical staff treated 6 of the injured and sent them home. But a 74-year-old woman is still in intensive care. Her condition is serious but stable.
The diagnosis is polytrauma.
The diagnosis is polytrauma, pelvic bone fracture, degloving wounds of the torso, a fractured shoulder, and broken ribs. She is receiving medical care and is being prepared for surgery.
In Kasil, the commission counted more than 60 damaged houses, some of which are practically destroyed.
Our house is damaged. We are writing a statement about it. There's no roof, no windows, no doors.
This is at the city council. One after another, people come in with documents asking for compensation. As Olga says, only the walls are left of the house. They survived by a miracle. She shielded her 4-year-old daughter with her body and her husband covered them both.
We just huddled in the corner so the shrapnel didn't hit us. We wanted to run to another spot, but we didn't make it, because the second strike had already hit, then the third. We could see that everything at the neighbor's place was already on fire.
Not only houses were damaged, but other buildings on several streets as well. Tomorrow, an emergency session is being convened in the city.
We will allocate additional funds to our municipal services, which unfortunately have also been affected. The administrative building of our water utility was severely damaged and our city buses were also affected.
Nearly 40 houses and several businesses were destroyed last night in the Starokostiantiniv community due to Russian shelling. According to the city administration, there are no injured civilians there. At the moment, they are dealing with the aftermath of the attacks in Kasil.
If only we could at least cover it so the rain doesn't drip in. If there's no house left, go over to that side and see for yourself. What can we do? It's not our fault, and we didn't want this. No one wanted this except Putin. We're left without a home. There are 3 families here, and the 4th just ruins. The whole house is shattered. It can't be repaired.
Right now, they're at least trying to cover the houses to protect them from the rain. People support each other, some with their labor, others with words.
I don't know, honestly. I don't know how much longer this will go on. I don't understand how the whole world can just watch this happen. They allowed this evil to grow. We are the shield for everyone.
Tomorrow, they are preparing to say goodbye to the people from Krasilov who were killed.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Now let's move to the Siversk and Kramatorsk directions of the front. The bloody rampage of the enemy army continues here as well. In the Siversk direction, the defense forces repelled 4 attacks. The invading units tried to advance toward Ryhorivka, but were stopped by Ukrainian soldiers. In the Kramatorsk direction, Ukrainian defenders stopped 4 attempts by the occupiers to advance toward Preteki, Bilahora, Stuposhki, and in the area of Kurdyumivka. 1 combat clash is still ongoing. The situation in Sumy region is now more tense than ever. This week, Kremlin terrorists struck the city of Sumy itself. At night, 3 drones hit a local enterprise. A fire immediately broke out on the roof of the administrative building. And in the morning, the invaders launched an airstrike on the private sector of the regional center. The strike landed just 300 meters from the home of TSN correspondent Oksana Solodovnik. The details of this horror are in the following report.
A loud night, a loud morning, and the threat of repeated strikes during the day. Today, enemy Shaheds and aviation caused significant damage in Sumy. The city was rocked by powerful explosions at least 5 times.
Explosions.
At 1:30 in the night, 3 drones hit an industrial enterprise. A fire broke out on the roof of the administrative building. The fire was quickly extinguished by rescuers. And already at 4:30 in the morning, the occupiers launched an airstrike on the city's residential area. 2 guided aerial bombs hit houses just seconds apart. The bombs exploded close to each other and damaged the gas pipeline.
The gas supply was disrupted, which led to a gas leak. We have already restored the gas supply. Right now, power company workers are on site. 136 houses on the street are currently without electricity as repairs are underway and the power pole needs to be replaced.
23 private houses and 1 apartment building suffered varying degrees of damage. Mostly the houses have broken windows, damaged roofs and fences. Fragments from the glide bombs were found by people as far as 300 meters from the impact site.
I was still asleep. It was 4:30 in the morning when I heard loud explosions. One, then another, shrapnel in the yard, in the garden, and the walls cracked on the 2nd floor. These are the kinds of damages.
The front doors.
The front doors along with the lock were blown out. The roofing slate was blown off.
How are the children? Were they very frightened?
Stress. They're experiencing stress. We took them to their grandmothers and we're giving them something to calm them down.
Svetlana Savchenko is suffering from enemy attacks for the 2nd time now. She says she miraculously survived the Russian terrorist attack on Palm Sunday. She is a conductor, and at the time of the strike, she was working on that very bus where most of the passengers and the driver were killed. And now she has lost her home. She survived only because she wasn't at home during the attack.
These Russian fascists, I don't even know what to call them. I just hate them for what they're doing to our city, for how many people are dying, how many are left without homes, without anything. That's why I truly hate them. Without a home, without anything. That's why I truly hate them.
At the moment, utility workers and volunteers are eliminating the consequences of the Russian strikes, while law enforcement and city council representatives are accepting applications to inspect damaged property. People have already started receiving the necessary building materials.
Now let's talk in more detail about the operational situation on the Kupiansk and Lyman fronts. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. On the Kupiansk front, the enemy launched assault operations twice in the area of Nova Kruchliakivka. Right now, one battle is ongoing. On the Lyman front, the invading army attacked 5 times near the settlements of Lipov, Rekivka, and Rydkodob. 3 clashes are still ongoing. Meanwhile, the Russians have started concentrating troops near the border with the Kharkiv region. Our forces are preparing for a possible large-scale enemy offensive. Western analysts believe that this very offensive will begin as early as June, because by then, Russia will have a 4-month window to try to break through the Ukrainian defenses before the autumn rains turn the ground into mud. Details in the following report by TSN military correspondent Andriy Tsaplienko.
The Kremlin dictator used peace talks as a cover for his offensive. At the very moment when Putin's envoys were already sitting down at the negotiating table in Turkey, his armored vehicles were moving south from the north toward Kharkiv.
I'm sure there will be more attempts. These are very important targets for them. Back in 2022, the Russians were 100% sure that Kharkiv would immediately come under their control.
The attack was an attempt to recapture the forest, which the occupiers called Berlin. The day before, the Katyia Brigade had completed an operation to liberate this area, but the Russians are not giving up. They need the forest as a staging ground for an offensive on Kharkiv.
Of course, they are planning further actions and, at a minimum, want to do what they did in 2022, so that their artillery can directly impact the city of Kharkiv.
This attack was stopped by Katyia, but Russia has amassed 50,000 troops at the borders of Kharkiv region, according to Western analysts. They predict in June there will be a major offensive by Putin. At Katyia, they promise the Russians won't succeed here.
They will keep trying to capture the city of Kharkiv. As long as we're here, their chances are very, very slim.
Even though the war is changing rapidly, the role of infantrymen remains crucial, while some types of weaponry are literally losing their significance before our eyes because they become easy prey for drones. The intensity of aerial reconnaissance in the Kharkiv direction is such that survival here depends on 2 factors: speed and effective camouflage. And so our rocket troops have learned how to camouflage themselves from the enemy. The Russians have long been camouflaging their grads under tarpaulins. They, like us, now very rarely use rocket artillery.
Here, in the field, standing still for too long means death.
It's almost impossible for such a large launcher to reach its firing position unnoticed. But when there's a need, the guys go anyway, because sometimes only they can stop a massive advance of enemy vehicles.
We didn't know exactly where they were hiding. I mean, we knew they were firing from that tree line. But where exactly in this landing is unknown. So they call us in and we hit the entire tree line at once so we don't have to search.
Drones on fiber optics are cutting off the logistics of the Ukrainian army more and more with each passing day. Our long-range artillery has become an effective means of counteraction. A separate artillery brigade of the National Guard supports the guys from the Freedom Force with these Slovak cannons, beautifully named Zuzana.
Over Ukrainian positions, there is a huge number of Russian drones above the Ukrainian positions. But even in conditions where the air is literally saturated with enemy drones, artillery does not lose its relevance. Especially such long-range and high-precision artillery. The only downside of Western weapons is that there is never enough of them in a war as intense as ours.
Zuzana 2 looks like a giant automatic rifle that can accurately fire 6 shells per minute.
1 shell is fired, 11 seconds pass, and the second one is already on its way. And because of the firing range, while the first shell is still in the air, we can launch another 9 and already start moving out.
Its accuracy and long range make it possible to hit command centers for those same FPV drones connected by fiber optics, which the enemy uses to terrorize frontline roads with impunity.
Yes, there are very few such guns in the world. We find targets up to 30 kilometers from the line of contact. In other words, we're firing into the enemy's rear. We reached 27 kilometers, hitting ammunition, hitting artillery, and mostly these were drone pilots. We use cluster munitions against the pilots.
The main danger for the artillerymen is Russian reconnaissance drones, which specifically search for the Zuzana, and when they find it, they don't hesitate to even send up a plane with a Kabi bomb. To avoid our air defense interfering with their aerial reconnaissance, the enemy flies their drones several kilometers high, at altitudes where the machine guns of our mobile groups are already powerless. So the anti-aircraft gunners found a mirrored countermeasure to the Cab and Super Cab in a rather unexpected way. Seemingly out of nowhere, an FPV drone appeared and with a single strike cleared our skies of the enemy aircraft.
It was the Ukrainians who were the first to use interceptor drones.
Later the Russians learned about this technology. That's why we're not revealing any military secrets right now. But the tactics for their use are constantly being improved. So the National Guard, while keeping certain tactical details secret, is always trying to stay one step ahead of the enemy.
It was in this area that, more than a year ago, Ukrainians began attacking Russian drones with FPV drones.
Volodya, they say that a kamikaze drone is a one-way trip, but yours comes back.
Yes, ours comes back. If we don't find a target, it returns so that when the next target appears, we still have a drone.
And what about the payload if it doesn't detonate? It's still connected, right?
Yes, it's connected. That's my risk.
The technology has spread. Now it's a contest of speed, maneuverability and endurance.
It's all shifted into a higher speed mode. So right now it's a war of attrition. That's how I would put it. They fly high fast, they don't stay in one place, they're constantly maneuvering.
This Russian drone sharply dodges when a Ukrainian drone approaches. It has a system that allows it to automatically make turns to avoid FPV drones. In Russia, this system has been named Ukiliant. It is installed on Zala drones.
Alright, I got it. It's heading toward LBZ. Unfortunately, we can't catch up to it.
The cooperation between units has turned this section of the front into an impassable zone for the occupiers. Enemy losses here are 10 times higher than those of the National Guard.
1 to 26. It's bad that we lose one of our own, but 26 Russians die in response.
Is that in your battalion?
Yes, that's just our battalion, the defense sector. We're an infantry battalion. 400 Russians, that's over roughly 3 months.
Maximum results for minimal financial resources. It's exactly these kinds of technologies we need to look for in order to stop the next offensive, which Putin seems likely to launch in the coming days. Innovative solutions and a constant race to stay ahead. Only this way, under limited resources, can Ukraine hold out.
I'm opening fire.
Now let's move to the Novopavlivka and Hulyai directions of the front. Let's be honest, this is another sacred target for Putin and his gang, so the situation here is also extremely tense. Today, in the Novopavlivka direction, the enemy attacked 16 times in the areas of the settlements of Konstantinopol, Bohatyr, Zeleny Pol, Novopil, and Novodarivka. 3 combat engagements are still ongoing. In the Hulyai direction, the aggressor carried out airstrikes on Hulyai using unguided rockets, and on Verkhna Tersa, Malinivka, and Olhivska using aerial bombs. In fact, over the past week, around 1,000 pieces of weaponry simultaneously attacked 13 regions of Ukraine: Kyiv region, Zhytomyr region, Mykolaiv, Sumy region, and other areas. In all these regions, just over the past few days, dozens of Ukrainians have been killed. One of the most massive barrages from the aggressor country, the Russian Federation, in 3 years was also experienced by the capital of Ukraine. Air defense forces in Kyiv and the region worked non-stop for more than 6 hours. Missile debris scattered across entire streets, destroying high-rise buildings, private homes, and businesses. Details are in the report from our colleagues at the television news service.
80-year-old Ivan Fedorenko still, to this day, can't believe that he and his wife survived the Russian attack.
What saved you? Adrenaline. I don't know, maybe God was guiding me back and forth and left me standing there in just my underwear. Everyone thought my wife and I had died, but we turned out to be alive.
Ivan Fedorenko is the former president of the National Olympic Committee, a major general in the armed forces of Ukraine, and he oversaw preparations for the European Football Championship in 2012. In his conversation with TSN, the man can't hold back his emotions when he remembers his pets. They did not survive the Russian attack.
I dreamed about the dogs. I dreamed about dogs and they burned.
You had dogs and they burned? Did you dream about them just last night? How many dogs did you have?
3, but they were buried yesterday. All of them. But life goes on. And life goes on.
Svetlana Maximenko is carrying out whatever she can save from the remains of her house, a houseplant and a portrait of her daughter. In March 2022, during an attack on this same neighborhood, her husband, Major of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Serhiy Maximenko, was also killed. At that time, the house was still being built and it was only partially damaged. Now all that's left of it are memories.
The most valuable thing, more than boots or bottles, the most valuable thing was this house. My husband built it. He worked very hard so that his family could live a normal life, in decent conditions. But you see, the Russians left us with nothing. They left us with nothing.
On Sunday night, a fragment of an enemy missile in Markalivka killed Mykola Lichter, an associate professor at the National University of Life and Environmental Sciences. A dozen houses were completely destroyed. Lukyanivka in the capital. Since early morning, the cleanup has been ongoing here. Many buildings are still without windows and doors, but people say they came to work and are ready to work. Is everyone cleaning up here?
We started yesterday, during the curfew, and we're working. Cleaning up. We're doing everything.
Yes, right away. Yesterday we managed to do it.
Yesterday they gave us this place. We temporarily moved from the cafe because everything there is destroyed. And since yesterday we've been serving coffee here.
On Sunday night, part of the street was destroyed by a Shahed drone explosion. 10 buildings, 8 of which were residential. 3 people were injured by the debris. This apartment building suffered the most. Several lower floors where many offices were located are now completely destroyed. People say it's fortunate the strike happened at night, otherwise many more people would have been hurt. The day before, in Lukyanivka, rescuers, utility workers and volunteers worked late into the night. Yesterday, they also spent the whole day accepting claims from those affected.
Approximately 40 people reached out. Everyone received assistance.
Here, in the Solomiansky district, nature itself quite literally stepped in to protect the locals. A fragment of a Shahed drone flew into a poplar tree and then detonated. The fire spread to the apartments. But if it had hit the building directly, locals say, the consequences could have been much worse. Residents say that Shahed drones were flying over their homes all night from Friday to Saturday. That's why most people either went to shelters or hid in the corridors. That's what saved them. There wasn't a single person injured in the building. Here in Makariv, after the Russian missile attack, 40 private houses were damaged, about a dozen people were injured, and 1 person was killed. At least 3 missiles hit here. They just arrived. It wasn't an interception, the locals say. The explosions left craters up to 8 meters deep. The scale of the destruction here is staggering. Some houses are completely destroyed. Just on this street where we are now, there are 2 such craters from the explosions and another one on the neighboring street. There, a missile hit and partially destroyed a house. Its owner died on the spot. We managed to capture footage of the bomb disposal experts working there. Right before our eyes, they pulled out the remains of the missile. Dozens of houses are left without electricity, gas or water. And the locals still haven't recovered from what they went through.
A rumble. Oops, a strike, and that's it. Rumbles. And a strike. What else could it have been? We were standing on the balcony watching. They were flying one after another, 4 of them. All of them fell. The 4th one flew in a different direction.
Utility services promised to restore electricity and gas supply in the near future. Police officers, together with rescuers, continue to inspect every house and document the damage.
That's all for today. But very soon, Front News will bring you new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, gathered so that you know the truth. Vladimir Timoshenko was with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.